In Season 3, we introduced a powerful idea, optionality. The ability to absorb shocks, the ability to pursue opportunities, the ability to make decisions from a position of strength rather than necessity. To measure optionality, we built 6 dimensions of financial strength: recurring surplus, liquidity runway, fixed cost rigidity, leverage pressure, income resilience, and funding adequacy. Together, these dimensions formed a framework capable of measuring the structural health of a household. In this video, we're going to revisit one of those dimensions, because hidden inside funding adequacy is a problem we have not yet solved, and that problem becomes the foundation of Season 4. Funding adequacy was designed to answer a simple question: are we on track? Do we currently possess enough capital to meet future obligations? Conceptually, the ratio looked like this: actual funding divided by required funding. If the ratio was above 100%, the future obligation appeared fully funded. If it was below 100%, additional funding would eventually be required. At first glance, this seems straightforward, but every ratio is only as good as its denominator. And that raises an important question: how do we know what required funding actually is? Throughout Season 3, we used future funding buckets: retirement, education, vehicle replacement, opportunity reserves, emergency funds. And for good reason. We needed a practical way to demonstrate that concept. But if we're being rigorous, something important happened. We assumed the target values. We never actually derived them. We simply accepted that the retirement bucket should contain some amount. We accepted that the education bucket should contain some amount. We accepted that the vehicle replacement bucket should contain some amount. The ratio worked, but the target values were largely placeholders. And now it's time to solve that problem. Imagine 3 households. Each plans to retire at age 65. The first household plans to spend $40,000 per year. The second plans to spend $80,000 per year. The third plans to spend $150,000 per year. Should all 3 households have the same retirement target? Of course not. The future obligation is different, which means that required capital is different, which means the funding target is different. Immediately, we discover something important. Funding targets are not universal, they are specific to future obligations. The retirement example is not unique. Education costs vary, vehicle replacement costs vary, housing maintenance costs vary, healthcare costs vary, opportunity funds vary, future goals vary. Every future obligation has its own characteristics, its own timing, its own uncertainty, its own cost, and therefore its own funding target. The more we think about it, the more obvious the problem becomes. We cannot know whether a bucket is adequately funded until we know how large the bucket should be. Imagine 2 households. Each reports a funding adequacy ratio of 80%. At first glance, they appear identical. But what if one household underestimated its future obligations? What if the denominator should have been much larger? Suddenly, the ratio becomes misleading. The ratio itself isn't broken, the target value is. And if the target value is wrong, the ratio becomes less meaningful. This is why determining future funding requirements becomes so important, not because the ratio is flawed, but because the denominator must be engineered carefully. This is the key insight of today's episode. Funding adequacy is not where the process begins. It is where the process ends. The sequence actually looks like this. Future obligations create funding targets, which create funding adequacy ratios. In Season 3, we focused on the final step. In Season 4, we are going back to the beginning. We are going to learn how to build the targets themselves. So in conclusion, in this video we revisited funding adequacy, and we discovered a hidden assumption. We trusted the denominator, without fully understanding where it came from. That changes now, because the future cannot be funded until it is first determined. The funding targets cannot be built until future obligations are understood. In the next episode, we take the next step. We answer a question that sits beneath every financial plan. Where do funding targets actually come from? Welcome to Module 1, The funding target problem.